Hi, everybody. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passion World Talk Radio, where our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. The views of the guests may not represent those of the host or the station. Folks, I have a really special guest today. I never interviewed anybody about this topic before, and that's what I love about doing what I do, because I meet all different people and talk about different topics. And I want to tell you about my guest today. But first I'm going to ask, do you ever think about the afterlife? Do you think you see ghosts? Do strange things happen and you think it's your loved ones sending you a signal? Well, I do. I have Matt send me signals, and I do believe that. Well, with me today is Dimitri Moraitis, who is a co-founder and co-spiritual director of Spiritual Arts Institute in Encinitas, California, which is part of San Diego, and an illumined metaphysical teacher, healer, and co-author of numerous books with Barbara Y.Martin. Dimitri is also a co-creator with Barbara of the SAI programs, course curriculums, and numerous workshops. Dimitri has been instrumental in bringing Spiritual Arts Institute to the place it is today as a premier metaphysical school. An eloquent speaker on a wide variety of spiritual topics, he has lectured across the country, appeared on numerous radio shows, and leads with Barbara at the workshops and training classes offered at the Institute. And the name of the book, folks, is Heaven and Your Spiritual Evolution, A Mystic's Guide to the Afterlife and Reaching Your Highest Potential by Barbara Y.Martin and Dimitri Moraitis. Welcome, Dimitri, to Chatting with Betsy.
Well, thank you for having me on your show. It's a delight.
Oh, thank you very much, and you're welcome. I'm so excited about this topic, Dimitri, but I want to ask you what I ask all my authors is, what motivated you or inspired you to write this book with Barbara?
Right. Well, it has been a labor of love. It was actually several years in the making, and it's almost like a cosmology book. It paints a big picture of what metaphysics is about. What does it mean to grow spiritually? Many people now are having what they call a spiritual awakening. They realize there's something more to life than what we see with physical eyes and things of that nature, and they start, because they have felt it in themselves, and they start searching. And this book is designed to help make that happen. Now, Barbara was basically born a clairvoyant. She was seeing auras at age 3, and she was having these kind of otherworld experiences as young, I think, as 8 years old. So this has been a part of her life from day one. She originally was going to go into a career in show business, but then realized metaphysics was really her path. So she became this amazing spiritual teacher, literally a pioneer in the field. She was doing things long before, you could have a podcast like this ever existed. So she really helped lay the groundwork. And I came originally to the California area also for entertainment, for movies and television, and it started actually go pretty well. But I was having these kind of other world experiences, let's call it that. And I didn't know what was going on. I call them kind of my inspiration moments. And it led to a very profound spiritual awakening. And shortly after that, I met Barbara. I recognized her as my teacher. She's considerably older than me. But right away, we realized we both like to write. And so we became sort of writing partners. She had amassed so much material. I said, we got to find a home for this. We got to organize it. We need to kind of elaborate on it. So we built this curriculum, and eventually it led to the starting of Spiritual Arts Institute, our organization, our nonprofit here in Encinitas. And then it precipitated all these books. We've written 5 together right now on different spiritual topics. The first one was on the aura, but also meditation, which hopefully we'll get to talk about today. Healing, spiritual healing, karma, the idea that you reincarnate, a book on the angels, that we're not walking this earth by ourselves. And this one, that yes, there is a great beyond, and it's not just for the time when you die. You're part of that greater life right now. It's inspiring you right now, and it's playing a fundamental role in your spiritual growth. And our hope that people reading the book will make their spiritual growth or their spiritual life an even higher priority. Right now, gosh, we are inundated with so much stuff. It's so easy to get lost in life almost right now. But one of the most important things we realize is we have to organize our life. We have to prioritize. And if we make the spiritual part of us a bigger priority, all of our life will go better. And we'll see it all from, shall we say, the eyes of spirit.
Yes, that's true, Dimitri. I mean, I'm 64, and I am just really now getting into meditating and being more coherent and realizing that bad thoughts, negative thoughts, are affecting my health.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Been affecting my health, but it's taken me this long. But I always say better late than never. So you want to talk about meditation. So what do you do at your specific institute for meditation?
Well, meditation is fundamental. It complements what we call prayer. Some people say, well, I pray. Isn't that enough? Prayer is sort of like a petitioning to the divine. You're reaching out. You're verbalizing. You're wanting to make that communion with a higher presence, let's say. Meditating is actually, in a way, yes, you're stilling the consciousness, you're stilling the mind, which sometimes can be very difficult to do, and you're receiving from the divine. So it's kind of like a circuit. You're reaching out, and then you're drawing in. But in meditation, the goal is to kind of tune the outside world out for a moment and get in tune with the inner part of you, the inner spiritual parts of you. And as you do that, you get more connected to life. And you also get more empowered when you do go back out into the normal flow of life. The Dalai Lama years ago asked the scientific community to research some of his monks, in terms of their meditation. They called them Olympic meditators because some of them had accumulated like 60,000 hours of meditation. That's a lot of meditating, right? And they would meditate on compassion, on love, on kindness, these kinds of things. And it was interesting from the scientific perspective, there were fundamental differences in their brain. And the way the neurologist described it is, he said, imagine now you take an apple, a delicious apple, and you take that first bite, and there's like a sensation you get, right, through the flavor, and it affects your brain, and it stimulates certain activity in the brain. Well, he found that these monks that were so strong in their meditations, they were operating at that level all the time. And when they meditated, it went into an even deeper state. So they realized physiologically there are positive life-enhancing changes that are going on through dedicated meditation. And one of the results of that study was that if you're diligent, if you meditate sincerely, a half hour every day for 3 months on something like compassion, again with an open heart, there is a discernible positive effect on the brain, a change in that brain. So meditation really should become the centerpiece of our day. We recommend daily meditation. Some like to do a big one on the weekend, kind of like, going, whether it's the synagogue or church or something like that. And that's wonderful to do that, but the consistency every day opens your life to it in a more regular fashion. I say, well, you brush your teeth every day, right? So you want to kind of keep in tune with the divine on a daily level. Now, yes, there are different kinds of meditations, and it's suited to the temperament of the person, where they are kind of in their desire to meditate. We do a meditation that involves the auric field and spiritual energy. So what we teach at the Institute is that you are inhabiting your body, but you're a soul inhabiting a body. You're a spiritual being inhabiting a body, and the spiritual part of you is radiating these beautiful energy rays that we call an aura. And everything you're thinking, you're feeling, you're doing is radiating a particular color in your aura corresponding to the quality of the thought or whatever's going on. So let's say if you're in a very joyful mood, there's going to be this beautiful pink in your aura. If you're angry and upset, there's going to be sort of this kind of dark, dirty red energy in the aura. So these things, the aura doesn't lie. It just shows you exactly where you are in your energy field. But what you can do is you can literally change that aura. Now, of course, you change it by your behavior, by your thoughts and your emotions, but you can change it through meditation. So an example we would give, let's say this was a real life story. We had a doctor in one of our classes, and he said, this was early on when he was learning to meditate, we give everyone kind of a goal to achieve in the class, and he said, well, I don't, he was very open about it. He said, I don't think I'm kind enough to my patients. I see a lot of them every day, and it's kind of in and out, and I feel like I need to just be kinder to them or more attentive to them. So he realized he did need to show more compassion. He wasn't demonstrating that to his patients. So the energy of compassion and love is the deep rose pink ray. It comes through in this beautiful pink light. So in the aura, he might have been missing that energy a little bit. It just wasn't there to the degree that it needed to be. So he started meditating with that color, that energy. It wasn't just a color, it was an energy, bringing in more of that loving flow. And he reported a couple weeks later, not only did his patient say, hey, what the heck happened with Doc? He's got a lot better bedside manners now than he used to have. But his practice improved. His practice got even more successful. So this is the idea. You change the energy in your aura, and it will have a corresponding energetic change in your life. And I've been meditating for almost 40 years now. It's just, It only gets better with time. It only gets better with time. Yeah.
That is so true. I'm into now doing meditation and getting into trying to release, for lack of a better word, post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
And, I've talked to counselors, but meditating and following a program has helped me so much more. And
Beautiful.
I really, really am into this now. And I really have to tell the audience that, I say this all the time, it's never too late. Whatever you've gone through in life, it's not too late to change. And, I know I can sense, Dimitri, people's auras, if they're angry. Yeah. People put that energy out there. It's true.
Exactly.
You could.
Exactly.
You're with
the
a negative person.
Vibe, right?
Yes. Yeah. It brings you, it brings you down. I have to ask you this because your book is about the afterlife.
Right.
And people, I've seen it myself, but people will say, I've seen signs. I've gotten signs from my loved ones, things that you can't explain.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that? Or people say,
people who have
no, that can't be.
Yeah.
Yeah, people who have passed
on. Death is just a transition. It is kind of like going from one country to another. It's nothing to fear. I like Woody Allen's line, I'm not afraid of dying. I just don't want to be there when it happens, It's a natural part of life, and there's a great beyond where, as a matter of fact, on the other side, they call death a birth because it may be a death here, but it's a birth on the other side. So it's almost like you're graduating from school. You finished your time on Earth. So the most important thing when you're, sort of getting to that time is, you want to feel, have I really done what I needed to do here? Have I left anything undone? And if a loved one is starting to make their transition, you don't want to hold them back necessarily, but you do want to make sure, is there any unfinished business for this loved one? We say, don't go to your grave with a grudge, or don't let, if you haven't forgiven somebody and they're getting near their transition time, forgive them, let it go. The life will balance itself out. So these people are free to, shall we say, move on to the other side. Now, there's a whole beautiful process when we transition. It's beautifully orchestrated by the divine. Yes, we sometimes go to these healing places because, the surviving body that we call the astral body on the other side, it sometimes needs healing if we've been sick for a long time or, died in a serious injury or something of that nature. And then there are reviews. You do have your life reviewed on the other side. You see what you did, what you didn't do, in a very objective light, not judging. There's no like, oh, you're good, you're bad. The goal is to achieve, but, if there's some things we were short on. And then you even have reunions on the other side. And then, of course, loved ones have the option to come back to visit Earth. So they can come to see how their loved ones are doing. Again, what did they leave things in a good way? Did they not leave good things in a good way? Sometimes those trips coming back can be a little painful. There's a story a clairvoyant told about a very kind of self-righteous kind of a minister that thought, he was going to transition and go right to God, and, the angels would be right there, and he found it wasn't quite like that. And he came back to Earth to see his wife, and he saw her lying in a lounging chair in the backyard, and she looked so relaxed. He said, oh, my God, I haven't seen her that relaxed. And he realized he was putting a lot of pressure on the family, trying to live things a certain way. So we see things from a different perspective when we're on the other side. Now, when we lose a loved one, the most important thing to remember is no love is ever lost. If there is love there, you will reunite at some point down the line. Even your pets, it'll happen. If you've been given 20 years of love to a cat or a dog, you better believe that animal is retaining that love when they cross over to the other side. So when we lose a loved one, of course, we want to go through the grieving period. We want to. It's better. We call it the 44 days, where in the beginning, gnash teeth, wail, do whatever you need to do to let the grief happen, but then don't make it excessive, because the loved one has to do other things on the other side. And what you want to say is, don't worry about me. I'm going to be okay. Thanks for checking in. I'm really grateful that you are. But I know we're going to see each other again, and I know we're going to be together again. And that way it frees the departed, but also frees the person on Earth to continue their life, because souls on the other side, if they see loved ones, grieving heavily, it disturbs them. They often try to say to them, I'm okay, I'm okay. Barbara, oh gosh, it was a very, just to say someone very close, had a very tragic loss of their brother. It was violent, it was, murder. It was not an easy thing. And it was a very hard thing for her to let go. She wasn't letting go of it. And this is when I first met Barbara, and she was so clairvoyant. Well, the brother came into her and was trying to say, please tell, this other woman, I'm fine, I'm okay. I don't want her to grieve for me anymore. So even, sort of semi-accepting that, it was still a hard thing to do. But it tells us, there's a different perspective when we're in the greater life. The most important thing is how we're living life now, and then that'll help us in the great beyond. Now, one other note before because it's kind of in the zone. It's so good that we study the other side here, because let's say I'm a person that doesn't believe in any hereafter, And no, it's just this. You got one shot at life. Do the best you can. Dust to dust. That's all there is. We're just this carcass. We're this collection of atoms, and I'm going to go back to wherever these atoms came from. And then, yes, the body, the physical body goes dust to dust, but not the soul. So they cross over to the other side, and they find themselves in a very familiar surroundings. It looks kind of maybe like nature. They see people that look as solid as anything physical. So their initial reaction is, I didn't die. What are you talking about? I died. Because they take them to this place to kind of tell them they've crossed over. And some don't believe it at first because things just look too normal. And then after a while, when they realize they're not where they think they are, they can go into a bit of shock. And that's where, having a spiritual foundation is so important, because it'll help them on the other side. Barbara had a very dear friend. Gosh, she lived to like 94, talking about visitations. Her name was Donna. She was a bit clairvoyant herself. In the very first meeting with Barbara, she's looking at Barbara and says, "Oh my God, I see your priest father standing next to you right now in spirit." And Barbara was grieving because her father had died young. And she saw him in the full priest regalia. He was a Greek Orthodox priest. You can marry in that faith if you do it before you're ordained. And, of course, it created this instant bond of friendship. And when Donna, was in her 90s, she had it tough. She had a brain cancer. That's a very hard thing and it eventually claimed her life. And Barbara tuned into her on the other side and said, you know what? She was so ready. She's already acclimated on the other side. She's already moving on to other things because her mind was already fixed that way. She dealt with whatever she had to in physical life. She handled it right. And then she was on to this wonderful new adventure. So that's a little bit how we want to think about the greater life as an adventure.
That sounds absolutely wonderful. I'll tell you what really blows my mind, Dimitri, and because I have experienced this personally, when my husband was dying, well, actually before he died, I would say 7 months before my husband died, he was seeing his deceased relatives.
Yeah.
And they say that when that happens, the veil is getting lifted. And it's so hard for me to put into words because he never did it before. And that's how I knew he was getting near. And
right.
He would say, he had a visit from his mom, his dad, his brother. Never mentioned his sister because his sister is still alive. And I was thinking, why didn't he mention his sister? Oh, because his sister's still alive. But it was so incredible that he told me that I had a visit, and I would say, that's great, Matt. How's your mom doing? Oh, she's doing fine. I said, okay, tell your mom I said hi when you see her. And 2 weeks before Matt died, he saw his dog. Because he said, I see a dog. And I said, that's Girl. His dog's name was Girl. That's Girl you see. And he told me he heard music and that there wasn't any playing at the time. And I said, that's probably the Angel Band. There's just things, Dimitri, and I know you know that to me, you can't explain it until you experience it.
Right.
And I've had signs from Matt. Do you mind if I share a sign that I received from my husband?
Please. Yeah.
I received a sign, and people might think, "Oh, Betsy, a little a wackadoo," but I know what I saw. And I saw a light where my husband sat on the couch. Saw a light, and at one time, and then I saw this beautiful, Dimitri, this was so beautiful. It was a bright yellow. It was like an arch, and it had flowers, like imprinted flowers in it. And I know that yellow means happy. and Matt was telling me that he's happy. I never saw it again. It happened probably a couple of months after he died, and it was beautiful.
Yeah.
It was really stunning.
Well, it sounds like you had a wonderful life with your husband. It is true. As they're getting closer, it doesn't happen all the time, but especially when they're open, loved ones come from the other side to help them prepare. Help them get ready. So, and then they're generally more open at that stage of life. And thank you for sharing that, because really, in a way, you're saying, even though he might have done some physical suffering at the end, I don't know his condition, but it was also something very beautiful, because at that point you really are closer to the world of spirit. And no question they will leave signs or let you know they're okay, or that they do check up on you every so often, to make sure you're doing all right, and how wonderful he saw his dog. I mean, that's amazing. I remember we had a cat, that we loved, and she died kind of abruptly. And I would kind of see her, she would just astrally, but she'd pop in, and then I think she was just trying to say I'm okay, and things are okay, because again it was kind of an abrupt ending, and that does happen, and it's a wonderful thing to know. Again, that the love continues, and that it's not really lost. So
that's true.
Yeah. Well,
wonderful. That's very true. Yeah, that's very true. I mean, I feel that my husband died 2 years ago, and this might sound weird to my audience, but I don't feel that Matt's gone. I feel that he's still here with me in some way. I really do. There's so many weird things that have happened. I removed Matt's name off of my cable and phone, and his name pops back on there. I get it. I receive a thing. Thank you, Matthew, for your payment. It should say thank you, Betsy, for your payment. And even on the free conference call that we use, it's weird because it says Matthew Sloan joined the meeting.
Oh, that's funny. Well, maybe he's signing in today.
Yeah, instead of my name. And I even told my manager about it. I said, it doesn't say my name. It says Matthew's name. But I do feel that that's his way of saying, hey, Betsy, I'm still here. I have to ask you your opinion on ghosts. Do people really see ghosts? Is that really a real thing?
Well, yeah, ghosts are actually what we call earthbound souls. So when we transition, sometimes, especially if it was traumatic or the person was very disoriented mentally, they don't even go to the other side. They're just in their astral body, but literally still on Earth. I had an experience when I moved into a home when I was in LA. It was a probate house, meaning the person had died and the house went into probate. Well, the gentleman had died of Agent Orange in the house, from the Vietnam War era. And he was going to, it was the time, this was many years ago, he was going to build up his family. He had a lot of dreams that he had for that house. So I had just moved in. It was literally the first night. And nothing was unpacked. It was just boxes and things like that. Barbara had already told me, remember, purify the house. There's those kind of a spiritual ritual we go through to cleanse the home. I didn't do that because there was such a rush to get in there. So I'm sleeping on the floor in the living room the very first night. And as dawn is breaking, I'm awakened by seeing these two hands and an arm and a sort of a faint figure of a man strangling me, trying to literally, with everything he had, strangle me with his hands. And at first I'm thinking, wow, this is one wacky dream. But I'm realizing it's not dreaming. I'm awake. And there was this apparition of a man that was really upset. I eventually kind of shook it off and then later we realized, I asked for Barbara's help. It's him. He's still in that house. He did not realize he was dead. He saw me as an intruder, and he was trying to protect his property. So even with all our prayers, it took about, and Barbara has tremendous gifts in this area to communicate with the other side, it took 3 days to convince him to follow the angels home, that he really had passed on and that this life on earth was over. So what we often recommend, especially if you're going to funerals and things like that, because it is true often the departed will be, at their own funeral from the other side, is you're telling them, follow the angels home. Follow the angels home. You're done with this life. It's over. Follow the angels home. So they don't have this lingering thing. Another example, which was, I wasn't directly part of it, but it was Barbara tells a great story. We live in the San Diego area, and California was known for gold, right? Gold rush days.
Right.
And there's a town not far from here, Julian, that was a gold mining town. And the one of the mines there, you can go now as a like a tour. It's been closed for 80 years, more than that. So she went down it to see what was going on. She came back and she had that look on her face. And I go, uh-oh, what happened? What did you experience? She says, you're not going to believe it, but there was, a miner down there still digging for gold. He didn't know he had died, and he thought, I'm going to strike it rich. God knows how long he had been down there. Now, interestingly enough, he probably was shocked to heck to realize this woman could see him and interact with him, and she helped him. She helped him get out of that mindset, so he could go home. So these things do happen, It's not really a haunting per se, but it's people that are caught on the earth belt, and they really need help. They need help to get freed, to go home. This is why, for example, we do actually recommend cremation to burial, because sometimes, people are still disoriented. They will hang around their own graves. That it does, not often, but it does happen. And the cremation is also a way of kind of saying, it's over, that this body has gone back to dust. It does happen. This is, again, why the better spiritual foundation you have, the better understanding of a spiritual life, it not only helps you in this life, it definitely helps you in the next life.
Oh, that's interesting. I had to ask you a question, Dimitri, because I'm curious about this, because about a dream that I had. Do you believe that people who are deceased come to you in dreams to deliver a message?
Well, dreams are fascinating. And, of course, we've been fascinated by dreams for eons of time. Dreams are a different facet of the mind at work, right? We have our waking mind, our sleeping mind, our dreaming mind. As we know, in dream state, sometimes things that appear very irrational while we're dreaming seem perfectly normal. Oh, you have 3 heads. Okay. There's no judgment in the dream state. So because of that, because the rational mind the dream mind is not the rational mind, yes, it is true. Sometimes the other side will impress us through our dreams because it's sort of, I don't want to say it's easier to touch that part of us, but it doesn't involve the conscious mind as much. So in that dream state, it's not necessarily the literal communication, but it's the dream interpretation of what could have actually been a communication. I had a dream once that it was incredibly specific about my brother, and he was just going to start medical school, and I had this dialogue in the dream, and next morning, literally, it was just almost like word for word. So what was that? Was that a precognition? Something was already going on in the spiritual ethers. I tuned into that dream state. And, my brother and I are close, so next day when he started talking, just like the dream, it was, in a way, yes, I kind of tuned into that energy ahead of time. But it happened because we have this rapport, that's why, a mother can be across the planet and know what's happening with her child, It's just some people, we have these rapports, and it goes beyond anything physical,
Yes, I ask Matt to visit me every night in my dreams, and he does. But my brother, who died last year, I don't ask Bradley to visit me, but I had a dream with Bradley in it that he was dressed as a mailman, and he gave me a letter. And 2 weeks, isn't that weird? Yes, and 2 weeks later, my son received a gift from Bradley that he left. He wanted each his nephew and his nieces to get money that he had left, and I didn't know that. And that's weird because I had that dream, and then my other brother, who handles the finances, told me that Josh will be getting money from Bradley, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, that was Bradley! He was telling me a message."
Great. Well, again, sounds like you have been tuned in there. Yeah.
It's
wonderful.
It's just things that you can't explain. I have to tell you that I have to share this funny story. It was around my mother-in-law's wedding anniversary. This is a few years ago, and my shower curtain rod was falling on my head. I had put it up. It kept falling on my head. And I said, Mary, that was my mother-in-law's name. I said, Mary, I know you probably don't like the fact that I'm living in your house, but I'm taking good care of your son, Matt. And Matt is not well, and I'm here, and I'm taking care of Matt, and you need to stop bothering me because Matt's okay, and you need to go. And do you know why? It stopped.
Well, there you go.
And it didn't happen again.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it sounds like, you're at a time in your life right now where you're just giving more space to explore the spiritual part. We all have our seasons of life, and that this is important. Something is calling you to do this, and I'm sure most of your listeners are probably on a similar place where, it's important to, when you're getting these feelings and promptings, to explore your spiritual life more. Some people poo-poo it. They may actually have a vision or see something and they try to downplay it. But if you're having these promptings, it's something is compelling you to explore the inner part of you more. So give it time. Use your, do it logically. Some people think, well, anything spiritual is illogical, and that's the furthest thing from the truth. We just did a workshop on the mystical and the material, and, a lot of materialistic people, scientific, say, well, when you talk about mystical, that's like superstition, and it's not really real. And we try to tell them, no, it's as real as anything physical. It's just operating by different laws. So we want to use our rational mind to contemplate these spiritual things because they can lead us to some very, very exciting places. And it really doesn't matter when in our life it happens. I love what Manly P. Hall, the great spiritual philosopher of the 20th century, said, as we get older, we tend to think of our life as a law of diminishing return. And that's not true, because life is eternal. And whether you start something at 5 or 50 or 80, just start it. That's the time that you're getting the calling. So whenever it's happening for you, at whatever age it's happening, you want to do your best to answer that call.
Yes, that's for sure. I'm actually more spiritual now than I ever was, and getting signs. Even, I'm going to say a few years ago, I looked at someone's picture who had died. I never met them. And I knew what kind of person they were. And I told their daughter, and I said, your mom looked like she was very happy and vivacious, and she enjoyed life, and she wants you to enjoy your life. She doesn't want you to feel guilty about that you didn't take care of her. She knows, your mom knows that you took care of her and that you did your best. And I never had that before, Dimitri. That was the first person I looked at, and I knew what kind of person they were. And she said, yes, Betsy, that my mom was like that. And I was like, it almost freaked me out.
You probably have a little natural thing called psychic ability. But just, I'm glad you're meditating. And again, if anybody in the audience is not yet and they're interested in their spiritual development, start that meditation, because it will accentuate the things that you're talking about. It'll bring you even more in tune with it. And not to, don't overplay it, don't underplay it, just let it be what it is, and acknowledge these things are possible. When Barbara was seeing auras at 3 years old and things like that, she didn't understand what the colors meant. She also thought everybody was kind of thinking the way she was. So, and then she got a lot of shocks, that they weren't. But she learned to just trust it. One time they were just this little kid. They were waiting for an aunt to come visit, and little Barbara just blurted out, oh, no, she's not coming. She died in a train crash. And the mother got horrified. How could you say such a terrible thing? And, of course, they got the telegram. There was a horrible accident. So these things do happen, and they appear irrational because they come out of the blue, but they're not. It's just they're operating by those spiritual laws, and you have to learn to kind of cultivate it in that way.
Wow, so interesting. Oh, Dimitri, I could talk to you for hours. I just enjoyed talking to you so much.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
So much, and I want to thank you for coming on Chatting with Betsy. And where can people purchase your book? Is it on Amazon?
Yes, it's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores. It's just available everywhere. Heaven and Your Spiritual Evolution. And our website is spiritualarts.org. We do have the center here in Encinitas, but we do video conferencing. We were doing video long before the Zoom era, so you can join from any place in the world. And we have a course that's, learning how to meditate with divine light. It's kind of our foundation course, Change Your Aura, Change Your Life. So if you want to learn more about all of this and really get meditating, that's a great program to take. And just also, it's a wonderful fellowship. I think one of the most beautiful things of this work is working with people like you, where you're working with a community of people, and their goal is to improve themselves and be more spiritual, and it just creates a wonderful fellowship, of shall we say, brothers and sisters in light.
Yes, it does. I'll tell you, I feel like, me personally, I feel like I'm a fine wine. I'm just improving with age.
There you go. That's it. Exactly.
I really do. I mean, I just see things so different, than in my youth. And I want to encourage everyone to.
That's what life is about.
Yes, yeah. Works in progress. And I want to encourage everyone to go on Barnes & Noble, go to your favorite bookstore, and if they don't have it, order it. Order Heaven and Your Spiritual Evolution, a mystic's guide to the afterlife and reaching your highest potential. And I highly recommend. I'm going to go on your website myself and take a look, and I want to encourage other people to do so also. And thank you again, Dimitri, for coming on. I appreciate it. Folks, if you missed any of this podcast, you can catch it again wherever you hear your favorite podcast. Chatting with Betsy, it's free to subscribe to. I'll name just a couple: Spreaker, Spotify. I'm on there. And I want to thank Jeannie White, who's station manager, Passion World Talk Radio, for producing the show, writing the blog. Please read the blog, because there will be information about Dimitri and how you can purchase the book and go on the website that he mentioned. And I want to thank Lillian Caldwell, CEO of Passion World Talk Radio, who makes this all possible. And I want to thank you, the audience, for listening and sharing. And please share this podcast to help other people. And I don't want to forget, I want to thank Sarah Scarlett, Scarlett Publicity, who arranged this interview. And thank you, Sarah. And I want to just say thank you, everyone, for listening to Chatting with Betsy. And please share it with your friends, because this podcast is to help other people. It's my way of paying it forward. And as I always say, in a world where you could be anything, please be kind. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio. Bye-bye now.